years, and most importantly, prior to 1990.
An exchequer deficit of €2.5 billion has been recorded to the end of February. That compares to a surplus of just under €1 billion in the same period last year. The change results from the transfer of €4 billion to the National Reserve Fund. Department of Finance figures show tax receipts are €1.3 billion or 13% ahead of the same period last year. That's down to growth in income tax and corporation tax. Research shows only 1 in 10 people have trust in what influencers post on their social media. The Advertising Standards Authority also found that 62% of people believe they post too many adverts. The body is coming up with new guidelines for advertising on social media along with the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. Head of the ASAI is Orla Toomey. She says influencers need to be more open about advertising.
Apps will have their own disclosure tools that will help influencers, and certainly they'll be part of the mix. Up until, fairly recently, we haven't been very prescriptive, but we're finding that things like, say, #collab, that's not meaningful for consumers. Influencers and brands might understand what they mean by it, it's a particular type of relationship. But I think from a consumer point of view, it's advertising if there is commercial relationship.
Flights into and out of Dublin Airport have been suspended due to drone activity in the area. The DAA said their hopeful flights will be operational again in the short term. That's it for now. We'll have more in an hour.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Treat yourself to a city break in Marrakesh, Riga or Stockholm.
Mostly dry tonight with just the chance of an isolated light shower. It'll be predominantly cloudy with lowest temperatures of 0 to +3 degrees in a light to moderate easterly breeze. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Start your day in flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
All right, you're welcome along. It is Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 10 o'clock. We got a busy one ahead. The Republic of Ireland manager Stephen Kenny is going to join us from 7:30 to talk Evan Ferguson. He will give us the exclusive, no doubt, as to whether Evan Ferguson will start or not against France in just over 3 weeks' time. I think it's fair to say Evan Ferguson is going to start that game if he can stay fit. So chatting to Stephen Kenny about that. He was over at the World Cup watching France and the Netherlands. Going to give us some thoughts on what he's seen and some of the different styles of coaching he's been looking at over there, and also obviously talking about this year, the 8 qualification games and the pressure that he is under heading into these qualifiers. So that's coming your way at 7:30. That means John Giles is going to be on the football show, and the full football show. He's in Dublin, so he was in studio earlier today. What a treat it is.
Only proper order, Nathan. They give him the full hour.
You're in the John Giles seat now.
I am, yeah. No pressure.
We gave John the full football show. We're also going to talk to Shabana Hearn because the WSL is back this weekend, and the Conti Cup final, which is the League Cup final, is Arsenal against Chelsea. So Katie McCabe should be playing in that on Sunday. And after 8 o'clock, we're going to talk Ulster football. I was tempted to do an accent there, but for some reason I just left it.
I thought you were about to go Tyrone in crisis.
Tyrone in crisis. We'll also chat a little bit about Derry and Armagh and Donegal in crisis.
I saw one of the most bizarre takes on Tyrone earlier today, which was the idea that now they need Mickey Hart and that winning the All-Ireland papered over Mickey Hart leaving.
You know what? I
listened to 4 years.
Paper over some cracks and win an All-Ireland.
Yeah, and I listened for at least 4 years when people were saying that Tyrone were actually being held back by late stage Mickey Hart. And wasn't the fact they won the All-Ireland then used as it was definitely the right decision to let him go. This team have now gone up and lifted Sam.
Yeah, it's not a particularly good take. Whose take was it?
I think it could have been Sports Joe. I definitely saw it at some point during the day.
He's gone there.
There you go.
Yeah. He's gone there.
No, but there were some people who were almost agreeing with it, going, hey, maybe actually Tyrone needed a harder transition. You don't need a hard transition. You try and win your All-Ireland.
Win your All-Ireland and pick up the pieces afterwards.
Indeed.
So John Giles, Richie, was in studio earlier and gave us a very, we sort of went off on a little bit of a tangent at the start for a good half an hour of John starting to reflect on his career and his son bringing up videos of games in the 60s and talking about life as a footballer. Spoke about his afternoon nap when he was a player, which professional footballers will tell you about is a bit more of a strain than it sounds, because at 3 o'clock in the afternoon the best thing for your body is to have a sleep, whether you like it or not. But he would go to bed and he would think about the match he had just played on Saturday. He would visualise everything that happened. He would think about it, the little bit of miscontrol, how his body was shaped. And he would get into the mindset of, you know what, when I'm out on the pitch again, I know what I'm going to do. So he would sit there dreaming, not even dreaming, in that sort of half
meditative
state, thinking about the game that had just happened. And that's what made him the player he was. Other players were just going straight to sleep.
In terms of visualization, like visualization is something that, you know, modern sports psychologists have encouraged, I think, obviously over the past couple of decades, but it seems like John clearly was at the forefront of that. But you only have to look at the way he played and look at clips of John on YouTube, and I'd always encourage people to do that, because I don't know, we're getting to the point where there might be a bit of disconnect where people wouldn't have an entire appreciation of how good a footballer John was. To look at the way he played the game, and there was a calmness about the way he was able to pass the ball around the pitch that suggested that he had done a lot of work as regards visualization and what he'd done wrong in previous games and how players moved and how players reacted to certain movements. It doesn't surprise me in the least. I don't know. I just wish he'd monetized this back in the day and could have become the spokesperson for visualization.
We are going to, over the coming weeks and months, get some of these old games that John played in and do a classic games club of sorts with John, where he sits and watches the games.
Deadly.
So he had a couple of matches that he was watching against Southampton and Manchester United, and they were 6-0 up against Manchester United Leeds. And as he admitted himself, sort of begrudgingly admitted, maybe a bit of showboating was going on. Now, this was on air. Off air, he was telling me, and he still claimed that this wasn't, you know, any of the stuff you'd see in this day and age. He was doing a Rabona as they were flicking it around. I've seen some of this. Like, he reckoned it wasn't that bad because they had played a game against somebody else who were just 2 or 3-0 up, and one of the players had sat on the ball to show how comfortable they were.
Neymar-esque.
Which...
I think it was the Southampton game I've seen where they're absolutely taking the mickey out of them. It's like whatever people would have thought about Anthony in that clip from earlier on in the season, what Leeds were up to as an entire team in that game against Southampton would have had the more gammony presenters of this world like absolutely puce with rage with the way they were carrying on the pitch.
Getting paid to have naps and play football, you're basically being paid a fortune to be an adult child. What a life. Yeah. Yes, that is being a professional sports person. Stephen Hunt wrote an article in the Sunday Indo, it must be 4 or 5 years ago at this stage, talking about this and talking about, you know, GAA players saying that they're practically professional, and he was going into the mundaneness of actually being a professional and not being able to do anything and not being able to go out ever and having to go home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and have a nap, and the best thing for your career to be to just lie on the couch. It sounded terrible. It came across, I remember at the time he was getting a lot of stick, that it was a real dig at GAA players, where actually it was just being a proper professional sometimes means doing nothing.
Did you read John Kiley's interview today in the Irish Examiner?
No.
So they're going to Portugal, the Limerick Hurlers, for a 5-day training camp on the break week in the hurling, and he was making the point that they actually get more done in that 5 days than they do across a few weeks, because he was saying that obviously you're very limited with the contact you have with the players. They've got jobs, you need to give them time to recover, while if you can do sessions and then actually give them proper rest and recovery, then do your analysis while you're away, and when the pitch is available all the time in a warm weather place, he said professionals, not that they have it any easier, but he's just saying that is the biggest difference between being an amateur and being a professional, is you don't have that much contact and you don't have a recovery that can be monitored properly by your backroom team, because these guys have just got normal jobs.
Mick says it was Southampton. They won 7-0. Yeah, so there was 2 games. There was a Southampton game and then there was a Manchester United game that they also hammered United in. So we're going to watch them back with John and critique his performance.
He'll critique himself more
what
than you.
happened there, John? Could be a dangerous position to find myself in.
I'd be interested to see his opinion on some of his teammates, given what he said about a couple of them before.
Yeah, so let's find games that they win quite comfortably.
Yeah, no goalkeeping errors, please.
For all our sakes. Can't libel the dead, Richie. You got to always remember that.
That's true. Still no, it's not pretty.
The Newsround is in association with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. So where are we starting on the Newsround, Richie?
The Aviva forwards coach Paul O'Connell says Ireland's injury concerns should ease by the time they face Scotland next week. James Lowe, Gary Ringrose, Stuart McCloskey and Cian Healy all set out the bulk of today's open training session at the Aviva Stadium. O'Connell believes all 4 should be fit for the Six Nations trip to Murrayfield. The forwards coach also says they won't be making any special provisions for one of the world's most informed players in Finn Russell.
He's an excellent player, and you probably have to accept he might catch you once or twice. That's part and parcel of the game. I think for us, Defensively, we've been happy with a lot of the work we've been doing. There's been a few missed tackles, which has frustrated us. But by and large, what we've been chasing as a defensive team, we've managed to achieve. And it's about continuing on with that next week and not necessarily focusing on any individual players. I think you have to have certain principles in place in terms of how you defend. If you start cramming in a week because one particular player is playing, I think that leaves you in a bad place, and we won't be doing that. But there's no doubt when we train next week, we'll probably get the opposition out half to threaten the line a little bit more. And play a little bit like Finn Russell does, but we've got to stick to our principles and defend as we've been doing.
So Lowe, Ringrose, McCluskey, Healy. Slight concern?
It's a lengthy injury list, isn't it? They've been dealing with it throughout the Six Nations, though. Even going back to the two players having to cry out a couple of hours before the game in Cardiff, they've just had to deal with it. And this is the first involvement we're going to see from a Lions starting centre in Robbie Henshaw, who's likely to play at 13 if Gary Ringrose's calf issue continues into next week. We were kind of pondering last night with Jerry and Andy, would Bundy Aki go into that 13 position if Henshaw's not ready? But he seems to be back training now a bit longer than just the open training session here, so he should be in contention for next week. So it's going to be reshuffled a little bit. I wonder, when I hear Paul O'Connell say there as well, who's going to stand in and pretend to be Finn Russell in training? I'm not sure if Ireland have an out.
It sounds like a fun job, though, doesn't it? It's a fun job. Just play fast and loose.
Yeah. Which is
probably not the best. It is that thing where, you pretend to be him because you're not going to be able to be yourself, unfortunately, in this game.
Yeah, so start giving other players the eye, start, kicking around a little bit randomly.
Joey.
Yeah.
Be Finn.
Yeah.
A little bit more Finn in your life.
Maybe.
John Giles was and is one of the greatest ever. In today's market, he'd be 100 million plus, says Shane, driving through the ring of Kerry.
If Declan Rice is 100 million, John Giles will be easily 100 million at his peak.
Giles and Bremner would have to go for the same price, obviously.
Yes. I presume they go
together.
Package, like the De Boer brothers. Pretty much
one goes, the other goes. Yeah. Didn't Graham Hunter talk about Giles being the best example of someone standing up for themselves on a football pitch? That's a nice way to put it. The whole league was afraid of him. Yeah, well, I think if you don't have to spend very long on YouTube to find some of that footage. And of course, the night of his 80th birthday, when we got Kevin Keegan on, he did greet him with the how's the jaw, Kevin?
I'd say it's probably still, that was a solid lumpy game.
It was.
That was a proper laid him out.
I was chatting to John earlier while you were late coming back in from chatting to Stephen Kenny, which we'll hear about in a few minutes. But John actually made the point that he stood up to Bobby Charlton pretty much in one of his first games playing for Manchester United as well. That Bobby Charlton kept on coming into the inside right position where John was meant to be. And even though Bobby Charlton was already an established player, one of the main players in the team, said he had no problem telling him to move out of the way.
How long more did John last at Manchester United?
Yeah, good point.
So you mentioned Stephen Kenny. I was out in Castleknock earlier today for a lengthy enough conversation with him. He's just sort of reacquainting himself with the world again. He hasn't really spoken to the media at all, I think, since the friendlies against Malta and against Norway. He's been at the World Cup since then, and obviously since then Evan Ferguson has emerged as the second coming of Irish football, but he has been working away behind the scenes on some Irish qualified players. And this is an interesting one, Richie. Mikey Johnston, who was a player I think would be very familiar to Celtic supporters.
Yeah, it looks like it. The Republic of Ireland manager Stephen Kenny has confirmed that he's looking to add Mikey Johnston to his squad. The Glasgow-born winger is currently on loan to Vitória Guimarães from Celtic and qualifies for Ireland through Derry-born grandparents. Johnston has made 20 appearances in all competitions this season in Portugal, scoring 3 and providing just as many assists. While the FAI are awaiting the requisite paperwork to allow him to feature against Latvia and France next month, Kenny says he expects Johnston to be an important player for Ireland going forward.
How many Microsoft updates do you need, Richie?
That's not me, surely. I'm not on Microsoft to say. I think that's you, William. I'm on a Mac here.
No, not me.
Outrageous. Something horrible is going on within the system anyway.
Do you know what it is? It's over the other side of the glass, I bet you, because I'm on the Zoom. As opposed to the Skypes. 53106
is the text number. I don't remember a huge amount of Mikey Johnston when he was at Celtic. Stephen Kenny was making the point, he'd sort of had 4 good seasons of been in and out and playing first team football, and then probably just stalled when change of manager.
Played in the Brendan Rodgers team, didn't he? That was my abiding memory. And I remember there was talk at the time about him declaring for Ireland, and then he got injured but played for the Scotland 21s. And it seemed that it was over from an Irish perspective. And that was the biggest surprise when Dan McDonnell broke this news a couple of nights ago.
So the squad's due to be announced in the next week or so, and we'll hear more. As I said, Stephen Kenny is coming up. Wouldn't confirm or deny whether Evan Ferguson would start, but I could tell by staring deep into his eyes that he will. He will.
He has to, isn't he?
It was an awkward standoff as I'm like, one blink if he's going to start.
Tell you what though, it's a scary proposition to realise that the best player in your international side is 22, 23 years younger than you. Whatever about them being the same age.
Oh, than you?
Younger anymore. Yeah, me specifically. It dawned on me the other day. I was like, Evan Ferguson 18. I was like, what was it? 22 years.
It's the born in 2004. So I can't remember what I was doing that day.
I distinctly remember where I was standing for various matches during Euro 2004. So yeah, Jesus.
Similar when Ron Lino's young lad signed for Barcelona earlier today, and you're just going, he's 18. Oh no. Time is cut up.
All over.
So Stephen Kenny coming up in around 15 minutes, less even. You will hear from Stephen Kenny.
Countdown is on.
RG Snyman is back.
He is, yeah, definitely this time. Munster will have the long-awaited return of RG Snyman off the bench tomorrow night. 17 months after he ruptured his ACL for a second time, the lock has been included among the replacements for Munster's URC meeting with the Scarlets. Dermot Barron, Patrick Campbell and Calvin Nash all come into the team that trounced the Ospreys last week. Simon Zebo and Niall Scannell among those missing out. Munster have confirmed also today that Chris Farrell has left the province with immediate effect. The former Ireland centre took a step back from playing duties in September. He was tending to legal obligations in France, where he'd been an alleged witness to an alleged rape involving former Grenoble teammates. In December, a French court charged Farrell with failure to prevent a crime. Munster say Farrell will be pursuing a playing opportunity away from the province.
Lads, how's Richie's head for heights, considering Bows are, in brackets, deservedly so high up the season, up the table? Sean, the Pat supporter, greatly amused by Rovers having more red cards than points. Whatever, Sean. Over 7,200 tickets sold in Tallaght tomorrow night. Rovers against Derry, title decider already 3 games in.
I like that you fully bought into Rovers fan.
And you might get a game in defence, Nathan.
Well, listen, if their centre halves could stop getting sent off, so they're going to be missing their 3 first choice centre halves tomorrow, which is not ideal. Any word on whether Sean Hoare's fit?
No, he's nursing an injury, so they're trying to get him back in. So I think they'll probably take a chance on him. They're even talking about Sean Gannon not being fully fit. So Stephen Bradley playing fast and loose with whoever is going to be.
Rovers just trying to generate a bit of interest. Start slow, let Bows have their moment, get a few more.
We're back
through the door at Dalymount.
Potentially let Derry win on Monday and get a bit of a lead and have to pull them back in.
Derry win tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow night in Tallaght. Derry Rovers.
Kenny's gone out to see them Monday. He's two tickets bought for this week, he said.
Kenny's going out to see Shamrock Rovers on Monday?
No. He wants to see Derry on Monday against UCD.
Okay.
And I think he's managed to get a ticket for Shells. He was talking about how difficult it was to get a ticket, but he's pulled one out of the bag.
Kenny, I presume, isn't the type who would just text Duffer.
No, he said he was on his computer, literally trying to get tickets.
Come on, Kenny. Come on. Surely we can get a Kenny Cunningham pass. Surely his face just gets him in.
Is he trying to get tickets for Belfield?
Nobody in the world has ever tried to get a ticket.
I was going to say, with no insult, there was no problem getting a ticket for UCD.
Okay.
I think you just had to navigate the system to get his ticket. Getting a Shells ticket was a little bit more difficult.
Lads, I see there's some Scottish saltiness to the GOAT Andy Dunn, saying Ireland would win handy at Murrayfield. The country that thinks they're going to win the World Cup every 4 years, despite being the drizzling excrement for 20 years, thinks we're getting too arrogant. Good times. Wow.
Yeah, the Scots have lost it, by the way. At Dunner, just basically giving his opinion. That's all he did. Just gave his opinion last night. Even Jerry Thornley beside him was.
I think it was more. Was it not so much the we're going to win by 15 points? Was it the they need to be put back in their box? And
no,
going, what box?
I think people are misquoting him to a degree. I think he said there's going to be a line in the sand. There you go, back in your box. As in, it's a kind of imagined Scotland think they're the coming force in the Six Nations. I don't think there's any arrogance actually going from Scotland whatsoever. No. But I think in terms of you think you're performing okay now, well, we'll show you. It's just it was a turn of phrase, and I think people who probably can't listen properly have gotten open arms about it.
Give us the golf before you go.
Arnold Palmer Invitational is ongoing. Seamus Parr shot a level par round of 72. The joint lead there at Bay Hill, Cameron Young and Chris Kirk in the clubhouse on 5 under following rounds of 67. Rory McIlroy level through 5. Shane Lowry 1 over through 5. And Padraig Harrington is 2 over. He has played 8 holes of his opening round. We should note as well that Katie Taylor looks to have opened the door to a fight with Chantel Cameron. She wants to keep that May 20th date. And Cameron is the super lightweight champion, undisputed as such as well, following her victories recently in the past 12 months over the likes of Jessica McCaskill and Victoria Bustos.
She's calling out Eddie Hearn.
Well, it reads as if you're reading the tweet, it has the smack of, given the tags and given the fact that it's a photo of herself. Hey, Katie.
Doesn't really feel like something Katie would do.
Like,
let me just stick up a photo of myself there looking good.
Yeah. This is very much the social media team have gotten on board with this one, making sure the right tags are in there and the right photo. So, yeah, this looks like it's going to happen.
Perfect scenario for Hearn as well. You want me to do this? I've delivered. Once I get Chantal Cameron in.
Richie, thank you as always.
Nice and lads.
Will, we shall talk to you later on in the show. Stephen Kenny coming up in a couple of moments' time, but first, the cash machine.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Our call went unanswered this afternoon, which means we have a rollover. If you've entered since 5 o'clock yesterday evening, you're still in the draw, but you need to know this new number, which is €51,407.08. Text play to 57557. That's 57557. Get your entry in by 3 tomorrow. Then across the Go Loud network of stations, Barry Dunn will make that call. If your phone rings, answer within 5 rings and tell him the exact amount in euro and cent, and you win all the cash. Remember, it is €51,407.08. Over 18s only. Text cost €2.50. You're playing across